Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot for tuning in to this very special Ushare. It's an absolute honor for me to introduce our guest today, Sophie. She's a dear friend and a must-know personality in the field of fintech. She's no stranger to PayU. She's been associated with PayU for more than a year now with our fintech advisory board, or what we I think aptly called as FAB, the FAB team. She has featured in Power 50 from Digital Banking Club, 35 under 35 women in fintech, etc., etc. The list is really long. And she's also a mother to two beautiful baby girls. Thanks a lot, Sophie. Thanks a lot for taking out the time and joining us.
Yeah, hi, Anu. Well, I'm very glad to be here today and definitely talk about this topic that is really dear to my heart, and I really hope to be able to share my experience and answer any questions that anyone might have. So, please shoot. I will be as honest as I can, and hopefully share something that could be insightful for you.
Thank you. I think this is a very special Ushare that we are having today. I think one of the most special ones for me personally, because I think the topic that we're going to discuss today around maternity, it's a topic that is, if not the most important, one of the most important events or milestones for an individual. And it's equally critical for an organization, right? If we want to correctly support our employees, it's a very important topic to discuss, and the stats vary everywhere, right, around maternity, depending on the country that we're talking about. But everywhere we do see that there is increased conversation around it, and we're really looking forward to it. Just a little note for everyone. We have a Slido open. It'll be open throughout the session. Please feel free to ask your questions there. I have it open with me. I will keep taking in your questions and weaving it into a narrative if we haven't already covered that question. So please feel free to keep posting. Okay, so Sophie, before we begin with the main topic on hand, you have had a fabulous career trajectory and a very interesting one. I have had the pleasure of hearing some bits of it. Why don't we start with that? If you could share with us your highlights, some of those tipping points in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been working now for around 15 years. So I think one of the few things to mention is that when I was a little girl, my mom was buying me books. It was basically books talking about employment of people, so like jobs and to give you ideas of what you would like to do in the future. And at this point, I fell in love with wealth management, believe it or not. I just wanted to actually become a wealth manager, and not related to money, but more about helping people basically make the most of their money to help pass on their future generation. And it's something that really animated and resonated into me. So I did from 15 years old to 20 years old, I basically make all the decision to become that. So I went into high school, I graduated in mathematics, and then I moved on to a business school into finance. I did my first internship in wealth management, and it was a disaster. I just realized that where I was, at least, wealth management was actually honestly to sell products to people that were pretty old and that didn't really understand what they were putting their feet into. And I just decided, well, actually, that's not going to be for me. And so after that, where I was very ambitious and my career was very traced, well, my career has been just very untraced, and I have been embracing it. So out of that, I started just after universities, mergers and acquisitions. where I was advising tech companies on their fundraising, as well as big companies onto buying other companies. I thought it was super interesting, but I wanted actually to go more operational. Out of that, I joined an investment fund to actually invest in companies. Found it super interesting as well, but this time really want to go even more operational. And this is when I joined Rocket Internet to launch HelloFresh in the UK, where I basically joined from day one to the national rollout of the company. So I was in charge of marketing there. Realized that e-commerce, basically startups were great, but e-commerce was not my thing, that I wanted something a bit more meaty. And it's when I joined fintech. And so I have been in fintech for almost 10 years now. I have worked in various iterations of it. I was head of product strategy at a company called Bankable, which was in charge of launching basically card programs for companies. And then I joined a company called Fidor. And that's probably one of my highlights. You're asking about my highlights. That's probably one of them, is to actually launch a bank in the UK, because that was probably like the most scary thing that ever happened to me, is to launch a bank in the UK, to be fully in charge of that, while I actually didn't have any command of how a bank was working, and I was really by myself. I needed to set up the team. I also needed to essentially create basically links with the company in Germany, because the company was based in Germany and we were the first remote team. So it was pretty difficult, but it was really great. We beat like timelines, budgets, numbers. So it was really like a great experience. I then moved into head of Europe role for the tech company that was behind Fidor. So to launch other banks for corporates, banks, insurances, essentially. And after 5 years of that, I joined recently OpenPaid. It was 12 months ago as Chief Growth Officer, where I'm in charge of marketing, I'm in charge of sales, I'm in charge of customer success. I'm also in charge of looking at acquisitions and international expansion. So the role is quite broad. So that is really like, let's say, on my day-to-day job. On the parallel job, I have been advising quite a lot of startups on their development journey based in Asia and in Europe. And I happily joined the Fab team last year with PayU to work with you and to work with Laurent on the growth path of PayU.
That's every time I hear that, it is so inspiring. And every time I hear, the first question that comes to my mind is, how do you manage all of this? Like, you're the chief growth officer for OpenPaid. You are on boards of a lot of companies like us. You are an active speaker on public platforms. How do you manage your time between family and professional life?
Yeah, and that's a big and great question. So first of all, I would say that I am not alone. Clearly, I am very lucky to have so much support, and that's really important. And that would probably be one of my first thing, is that get all the support you can. Just think about people around you and see how you can get support, essentially, when you embark this journey. So I'm lucky enough to have a husband that is super hands-on, and you could think that we probably have reverse roles versus what the like society would expect, any society would expect. So it means that my husband is doing a lot of house chores. He is looking after the girls at least 50% versus me. I am also lucky to have my parents close to me. So we are not unlucky to not have my husband's parents, but my mom has a very active role in supporting us on the day-to-day. And the girls are also going to nursery. So we really have like this support network, and it's really not only me. And it means when one of them is sick, well, either it's going to be me jumping in, but if I cannot, I know that I have several other options, essentially. So that would be the first thing. The second thing, when you say, how do you manage your time? I think it's what your brain becomes when you become a mother, is that, well, if you were not efficient before, like you become the next level of efficiency because you want to spend time with your kids. Maybe some mom doesn't feel like so and just want to spend more time working. I think it's also about not being judgmental about whatever people feel in this journey, and it's just about setting up what rules are the good ones for you and trying to stick to it as much as possible. So it means that, for example, myself, I try to stop my work every day between 6 and 6:15. Because it's the day my girls come back from nursery. It means that I make myself unavailable for the next hour. Don't get me wrong, I don't encourage working out of hours, right? Like, I don't think it's something that is sane for the company or for the people. It's just, well, when you have different things to look after, sometimes like, maybe it's not my day-to-day work at OpenPay, but sometimes I need to prepare for a talk, or maybe I just need to help one of my companies, and that I will dedicate some time at night to do that, but it's really on my opt-in basis. It's myself agreeing to that within the boundaries I have set for my girls. That's what I do at night. In the mornings, what I do is that I essentially I will always have breakfast with them before they leave to nursery. So it's something that I refuse to give up on, essentially.
Yeah, I think what I hear from you is just having the flexibility and the choice to make your own kind of calendar and routines does help. And we'll deep dive a little bit more on that in the session. But before that, I actually want to ask you a question around when you started thinking about maternity, right? When you started, everybody has a lot of anxiety or a lot of concerns or thoughts around it, especially when it comes to women. It sometimes becomes a trade-off, unfortunately, a balancing act. So, like, how was your process?
Yeah. So I am a planner. So I had all planned it out perfectly, like for it to arrive at this exact time that was perfect for the end of a project, just perfect in time with summer, and and basically like according to my life, right? And the life of my husband. Well, the news is that it doesn't happen all the time like that. I wish for everybody, like essentially hearing or listening to this podcast, that it's gonna happen to how they plan. The breaking news is that it doesn't always go this way, and that essentially when you embark in this journey, you need to understand that it might not go according to your plans. Meaning that if you have tried to optimize it with because okay, like my colleague will come back, then it's the perfect timing for me to leave because she will be back, she will be able to cover, etc. It's not going to be like that. My personal journey into it is that with my husband, we have experienced big infertility problems, which means that what I thought would take a couple of months in my planning, well, my baby came up only, I think, 3 years later in the journey, which means that essentially it has been very cumbersome to go through this process. That's the truth. It has also been taking a lot of mental toll, in the sense that at this time I didn't mention it to my employer, my former employer. So I was doing all of that in the background, not communicating, because Because yes, I was in a position where I felt that it could become difficult for me. I was the only remote employee of the whole company. I was working for great people, don't get me wrong, and this is where I'm coming to, is that essentially I think not everybody might feel safe about talking about maternity in the workplace. My advice for all leaders would be to make it comfortable to discuss it. But second would be that if you experience such thing, you should be honest about it, because it takes such a mental toll of going to doctor's appointments, like going through like rounds of drugs, etc. That if I had to redo it, I would be 100% transparent about it. And that was my first journey. My second journey, I learned better. And it means that when I joined OpenPaid, or before I joined OpenPaid, actually, so I was in discussion with them, and we were going for this second baby. So again, through our infertility issues, and I was 6 months in the process. And it was not the great time to change jobs, obviously, because you just want to be a bit more settled. But I thought it was a great opportunity, and I didn't want to prevent myself from jumping into it. So actually, I discussed around me, and I got this great advice saying, look, if they are not able to follow you through this journey, you shouldn't join them. And it means that the day that they told me that they were making an offer for me, well, I just took the phone and I called my future boss, and I told her, look, I might be pregnant next week. Like, are you still okay with me to come on board? And don't also get me wrong, you don't have to do that. You don't have to say that. That's in plenty places would probably be illegal to have that kind of discussions, but I felt safe with this person to mention that, and I also didn't want to put myself in a position where I would feel unsafe going through this maternity, and it was right for me to communicate in this way.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, like you said, it's. I think the amount of time that a person spends in a workplace, it is a responsibility to make it as safe as possible for the person to share and to communicate such things. Just building on that, Sophie, you took up a big job. You were the chief growth officer. It was a fast growing company. And then you had to take a maternity leave. So I'm sure you had to do like a bunch of planning around it, right? From a professional work perspective. What was your kind of action plan around it, if I may call that? Yeah, something on it.
Yeah, so just to start, I would like to mention that my 2 maternity leave have been different, and that is also important to realize that your maternity leave should adapt to your current situation, and you should plan around that. So it means that my first maternity leave, essentially, the company was in the process of being sold. I was changing teams, which means that essentially, like, I have been totally off the grid. And I was happy with that. The second one, I just didn't want to be off the grid. I was part of the exec team, and I'm still part of the exec team. We were going through a massive restructuring process, including all of my teams. I had to essentially arrive, identify what needed to be done, put in place new teams on those streams, recruit quite a lot, and make sure things were gonna get done while I was away, but also in a way that I wanted them to be done, so that when I come back, I don't have to undo everything. And it means that I have been doing some planning. It means that I have also agreed with my company to essentially find an interim consultant to take over for me and to vouch for me in the company and to keep my seat on one side, but also to understand what I wanted to achieve and to really be my representative on the company. And I have been extremely lucky because I have found this perfect person that essentially has been as light touch as I wanted, but still has kept me in the loop whenever a big decision was made. So what I have done very concretely is that I have presented a plan to my boss, a maternity handover plan to my boss, the CEO of the company, out of which the consultant was a part of, but also explaining when I would leave, when I would come back, because I knew when I wanted to come back. It's also important to realize that sometimes you might not come back at the time you think you will come back, just for plenty personal reason. Because when you become a mother, or a father actually, because that's also a thing, well, you might see things just a bit differently, and I think it's good to provide yourself the flexibility of this open end if you can. But also I provide her with a action list of what the consultant would go through during that period, and also how often I wanted her and me to interact during that period, and also something around the fact that I wanted to still be part of our board meetings. So I really created this plan of interactions that I wanted. So again, the company hasn't asked for it. It's really me that wanted to be part of it this way, because I just realized that coming back would just be much easier, knowing what was going on, being part of the big decisions. And it actually has been the case.
You had an exhaustive plan with check-ins and all of those things. That's a wonderful. So that was around how you planned for the handover. I probably wanted to take it one step further and understand from you, what do you think a workplace needs to put in place, infrastructure or kind of environment. What are the things that an employer should keep in mind to ensure that women are at the helm of their career, and this is not something that should act as a roadblock for anyone. And we've received a couple of questions also from the audience around this, so if you can, I think, touch base on that.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's really important to prepare before. So there is three periods, right? There is just the ongoing basis of making it a safe place to discuss about maternity plan if the person wants to, knowing that they not gonna be basically impacted by no promotion or no salary increase or no whatever, if they dare saying, look, I'm coming to you, I just want to let you know that we are starting trying and that it might happen or it might take more time, but I just want to let you know that I'm going through this process, just so that you can think about it. I think as a manager, I would prefer to know that. To be able to also be mindful of what the person is experiencing. But I think it's also okay not to know it, because everybody can be also secretive about that. But I think it's really about making it a safe place for women to say, if they want to be proactive about it, they can be, and they won't be impacted. That's the first thing. Then there is the period pre-maternity leave. It's really about taking into account what might happen, might need to leave earlier in just for health reasons, might need to go to the doctor. So all of that are, things that I believe we need to be mindful of. Might be a bit more tired as well. That is something that, well, productivity can go a bit more down, specifically the first semester, when you're a bit more tired. The trimesters after are generally like a bit more energy, but the first one is that. And it's just about being mindful of that and providing the support. It's about also like planning for what's gonna happen during the maternity leave and what's gonna await the person after the maternity leave. And also like having this discussion before the maternity leave, but also leaving it open during the maternity leave if the person wants to come back part-time, wants specific arrangements for whatever personal reason, or even wants to come back later, because you don't know what can happen in someone's life around them, around like the baby coming essentially, but it might take things might change. So I think there is like this planning also like pre-maternity, during the maternity leave and post-maternity. So it's really having this discussion around that. I think it's also an HR perspective, training the managers to have these discussions, to be mindful of all of that. And the last point would be around the fathers as well, because by empowering fathers, giving them time off, explaining them what they will go through, you're helping the mothers ultimately as well. So it's really important. I think fathers have a big role to play into empowering women through their maternity leave as well and their return to work.
I'm so glad you brought the point about fathers, because I think whenever we talk about maternity, the focus is mostly on women, which I can understand the logic behind it, but it is also important that we consider that it's an equally big thing for fathers, right? And sometimes as a society, we tend to forget that. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I think there's a lot of discussions and conversations happening now on this topic. One question that we received from the audience on this was, so as big a change as it was for you, it was a big change for your husband as well.
Okay.
Process.
I didn't hear your question, and I'm so sorry.
Sorry, network issue probably. We received a question around. So it was a big thing for you, right? But it was an equally big thing for your husband. And how was his experience?
That's a good point. Well, like his experience on a work basis, maybe like I can touch upon a little bit about that. So my husband was starting a full-time job at just when he came back from paternity leave. So we essentially I've been lucky enough for him to have 1 month off to really support on the first step of the process. But essentially he was starting a big job at the same time, and it has been both times the case. So every time we were thinking that he would do the full maternity leave with me, and both times he actually let me down 2 weeks in the process, 2 weeks and 4 weeks in the process, which has been, the first time was good. The second time has been a bit challenging because we were in the middle of COVID and I didn't get any external support. I mean, I couldn't see my parents. We didn't have the nursery, so it means I had both girls with me. So the baby and the toddler. So my girls are 6 months and 24 months. At this time, they were 0 and 18 months. So it means that it was a bit challenging on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, we have been handling. I think my husband's job is less flexible than mine because he cannot work from home. So on a day-to-day perspective, they just don't really understand remote working. And if the kids are sick, he can take up to 2 days a month on working from home, but yeah, like it means that we need to deal with that on a day-to-day basis. And that's where I think like companies need to do a lot of work on that. So France, where we live in, just agreed to a 4 weeks paternity leave, which is a great advancement, I think. But I think we still need to culturally move towards understanding that it's just not only the mother's responsibility when kids are sick to just drop everything and get on with it, essentially, that it's a shared responsibility, and then you don't have the external support, then, well, everybody needs to be able to support.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and especially it's also a lot dependent on what the society and the country is, right? What kind of infrastructural support you have. And in that, I think things like paternity leave or allowing even fathers to take some time off to help with the care of the child, I think very important. I couldn't agree more with you on this one. Uh, excuse me. Um, just on that, when you said that, during COVID you had to take care of a newborn child and of an 18-month-old child alone, with not much external support. Like, how did you manage all of this? And I know you already mentioned that you were not completely cut off from work, so you were tuned in there as well,
Yeah.
right? So how did you do that?
Yeah, well, I guess it's what we all end up doing, to be honest. So it's not super woman power, or maybe all women are super women. So, like, I think that women. I think that's more the message here. Like, some days can be very tough, specifically like when the babies are crying and all at the same time and things like that. And well, my silver lining was definitely nap time. So being able to put my baby in a routine and having my big girl still doing the naps. So it's something that, well, some people are pro and some people are cons. I have followed the baby routine boot camp, which is essentially feeding your baby every 4 hours and like putting them on schedule, and after that they fall asleep. And for my 2 girls, it has been working very well, which means that I could really know when they would be sleeping, which means that I was taking that time off for myself. A lot of mothers would tell you need to sleep during that time. When they sleep, you sleep. I didn't feel so much the need of doing that, but I was definitely taking that time as personal time. The second part was that when it was a bit too much and I was a bit too tired, on weekends I was taking my time off and doing something that was making me happy. So, well, not seeing much my friends because COVID and lockdown. But potentially, yes, go like calling friends, going out just for a walk, like my personal thing that makes me happy sometimes is just to go for a spa and like go to a sauna and just do that. So that's one of the things. The 2 other things that I have put in place and that really makes me happy and that I actually have kept on up to now is that I wake up earlier before the girls' breakfast, and I just do a bit meditation and I do 10 to 15 minutes sports. And that's not so much. Like, I commit to that for myself. It's 25 minutes a day. That is just mine. And that makes me happy. So basically, I have put in place all that different little things for me that I commit every day again and again to do.
Yeah, I think this is something that we've heard in a lot of other conversations also. Uh, Everyone's advises that take out some time for yourself, which is just your time where you can unwind. and have a routine, just set that expectation with your family and with your colleagues that this is my time, this is what my routine looks like, right?
Yes.
So,
And get the
uh,
buy-in of the people around you, as you mentioned.
absolutely, absolutely. Just on that, I think we've received a very interesting question. It's on the top of the list at the moment. It says, motherhood is not always a fun ride. There are often more lows than highs. What is the pep talk that you give yourself on days when it is all blue?
Oh.
That's a good.
Um, so a couple things. That it's a process, and it's what I tell myself like during my whole life, and I think it's what makes well that I have taken all the challenges that I have taken. So essentially, like if you think you're doing some stuff like for the end of it, I mean, you will miss your life, and that's the truth. It's just you need to enjoy the process. So yes, sometimes you have bad days, but it's also about enjoying the process. It's about enjoying this time that you allow yourself to spend with your child. Because going back to the fact that I feel very lucky, I got 6 months maternity leave this time instead of 4 months regulatory. That was time offered by my company for me to bond with my child. And yes, my child can be annoying, and both of my children can be really annoying. But on the other side, it's times that I will never get back, and it's times that I'm allowing myself to the end of the process. Like sometimes it's bad, but it's gonna get better, and then it's gonna get bad after that again. But it's really enjoying those great moments and making mental notes out of it. So I think that's really the main pep talk is really about it's part of the process. The second part is really that time goes by so quickly, like literally so quickly that I wouldn't want to miss a minute of it. I know that some moms, and we all are different, some moms are embracing it, and I have been one of those, essentially. I have been one of those where I am a very hard worker. I love my challenges, but I have put my brain into, okay, this is my job right now, and then I just need to take as much time as possible, enjoy as much as possible, because it's the time to bond with my baby. But other moms will just say, oh my God, I hated being at home. I just want to go back to work. And it's fine too. And I think it's really about understanding that it's fine too. And going back to that, and maybe the birth of the babies, because me, like, I was not a mumsy mom. Like, literally 1 month after I had before I had my first daughter, I was crying. Like, I vividly remember I was in the car with my husband. I was just like, I just don't feel it, Edward. Like, I don't feel like a mother. I just don't know, like, if it's gonna work. And I love my job. I just don't want to leave it, And my husband was just like, you know what? You will be a great mom, and you will be the mom the way you want to be. And I will just be the complement to that, the way I need to be the complement to that. So you will be just the mom you want to be. And you will be a great mom. And if it means you just don't want to be that involved, it's going to be fine, because I will be around. And it's, wow, it released so much pressure out of me, like that day, to be able to tell him, look, I just feel like it's not gonna fly. And he just told me, I'm sure you're gonna be great, but also you will do it the way you want. Was just putting out all those expectations of being like this perfect mom that you can see just outside. And what happened weirdly is that, so I talked with my friends around me, and I was just like, but what happens like when you don't bond with the baby, because it happens. And that was also something very interesting. Some of my friends told me, look, I didn't bond with the baby for days or weeks, and I went into postpartum depression, and it took months even for me to love my baby. And that released a lot of pressure out of me. So I have been very lucky in this path of motherhood to actually feel this bond immediately with my babies. Like immediately, I felt overwhelmed by love and by duty and by everything. And so it means I have been embracing this journey up to the point you cannot imagine. But I allowed myself to have those discussions with my friends, and my friends have been kind enough to show that, to share that with me, that it hasn't been like always the same for them, and that it's okay, and that you are perfectly normal, and nobody will have the same journey, and essentially you shouldn't have too much expectations. You should just take it as it is.
I think, firstly, I want to thank you for sharing your personal experience with us. It's, you touched upon so many important things, like the anxiety that mothers feel just before the delivery, that fear, or even post-delivery, postpartum depression is a common thing, and somehow it's not a thing that people talk about. There is a certain taboo attached to it, and I think when you speak about it, I think it will inspire a lot of people to be fine with it, to have conversations that just like you had with your friends, right? So I think like a big thank you for sharing that. Two very important points there. I think we've discussed quite a bit on the pre-maternity and how the planning around it is. I probably want to change gears now to move into your post-maternity experience, right? Say your first day at work when you got back from maternity. I'm sure there must be like a rush of feelings, right? So, like, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, so I think so. The first one, I was planned to come back when the baby was 2.5, so 2 months and a half. So my daughter Calliope was 2 months and a half, and I definitely had this mental breakdown, and my body just stopped working. And well, I got another 2 weeks of essentially. I don't know, health, sick leave, essentially the time to recover. It's just, I think I wanted to go back too early, and I was mentally against it. My body, my unconscious was really against going back to work so quickly. So essentially, it's what it has shown. And those 2 additional weeks with her really enabled me to go back very well. I was feeling so good because maternity, like nursery was aligned. So those 2 weeks, I started rolling her out at nursery. And the last week, I was by myself. And just really, it helped a lot. So my advice would be to definitely not go back if you think it's too early. Just have this discussion, and as a manager, be ready to receive this discussion, even if you're desperate because you have so much work going on, and it's a lot of pressure on your teams. Just remember that someone coming back just later, taking a couple of weeks, even 1 more month, will come back just much better and much more ready to deliver the work you need them to carry out. So that would be the thing. The second thing would be to plan personal time to actually land without the baby before coming back. So I had 1 week, the second maternity leave, where my girls were at the nursery, part-time, and part-time I had them, which meant it was a nice, like, coming back to work. And it means I spent personal time focusing on, well, what would be my priorities at work. I also talked to a few colleagues this last week because I just didn't want to get this a bit shyness of the first day at work when you have everybody jumping on you and you just, yeah. I just wanted to come back and talk to the people I'm the most friendly with and understanding the pulse of the company. I had talked to my boss and I allowed myself personal time. So this time has been crucial two times for me, like really crucial. Then my first day at work, well, my agenda was pretty full, to be honest.
I can imagine.
So like people had already put a lot of time, like my boss was waiting for me to do a 3-day strategy session that started day 2 to day 4. So I have been very busy, but so I was really sad to leave my second baby, obviously, but I felt it was the right time because she was 5 months old at that time. And the first day felt a bit, I felt prepared because I had talked to people. So I felt a bit shy of coming back and a bit anxious probably of not being able to deal with the amount of work waiting for me. But I kind of think it's a day-to-day thing. It has nothing to do with maternity leave. It's more about, okay, when you have had a 6-month break, you just, okay, you know the different streams you need to work on. You also know that you need to investigate on what really needs to be done and understanding what has moved on, etc. And it's generally like you need to set your time for that. I haven't been that good at that this time because so many people were expecting me on day-to-day stuff. But it has been okay. Essentially, I was really ready to embrace the journey because I had the feeling that I had carried out my mission as bonding with my new daughter, and I was ready to go back, essentially.
Wonderful. And do you see any changes in you, like pre-maternity and post-maternity, especially during your first time, right? Any personality changes,
Uh,
or how you work, even, or how you work with people? Did you see any
so
changes?
I like clearly I need to so two things probably. I need to finish by 6:15 every night to see my girls, and that whatever happens, that's something like I don't want to compromise on. While before I would have been like happy to keep on like no problem because I'm committed to my work, but I'm in love with what I do as well. But here, most important are my daughters. My daughters are what is most important in my life. Of like, no doubt about it. And the second change would be probably more empathy. So I am someone very like in general, like I think quite empathetic. But I think I have become the level above of understanding personal circumstances, specifically of parents, when the nursery closed down, when you have the grandparents that cannot help and stuff like that. But I think it's something that goes away with COVID, where like anyway, we just need to get on with it and we need to support our people along what is going on in their personal life, but really more mindful probably of like mental health of people, supporting them, like making sure they are okay, and just wanted to support as much as my ability for them to perform and also be happy.
Yeah. I guess having when you said right that now you understand what parents would go through. I think that's the biggest thing. Just being open to the fact that different individuals are going to have different sets of challenges. I think that's super important. And you're a people leader, right? You are a leader in your organization. So, during COVID, what are the kind of things that you've done in your organization to support the employees through this? And it's not necessarily just around maternity, but there are a lot of parents who are struggling because schools are not open or whatever. So, how are you managing your team?
Yeah. So I think what we have done is really work around mental health and hours flexibility, right? And really getting on with it. So around mental health, we have trained our HR team to be mental health helpers. So basically, our people can reach out to them anytime. We have also put in place a private anonymous line for our people to be able to reach out anytime without us knowing. We don't even know when there is a call. So that was and is important for us as England is going again into lockdown, essentially. So it's happening again. We have created a lot of social events. So we have the lunch and learn sessions where we have made guests come and explain things from the inside of the company, outside of the company. We have sports sessions, so we have yoga and circuits trained by some of our employees. We have the pub quiz every Friday nights. We are giving money for teams to have lunch remotely. So basically, like to force people to engage as much as possible. We have put in place all hands on a weekly basis. Before it was on a monthly basis, and now it's on a weekly basis. So we are communicating as much as we can. We have put in place recognition things. So on a quarterly basis, recognition awards to basically recognize the efforts of people. We are communicating on the promotion of people as much as possible. We have also opened the office back on the 14th of September, keeping in mind that some of our people are living by themselves in shoe boxes, essentially, and really making sure that they know that they can come and hang out in a safe place with their other fellow colleagues and not be alone. So we are doing as much as we can, really. We are flexible in terms of hours as well. So like people need to be here for core hours, but essentially like we are not micromanagers. Essentially people can get along with their life and if their kids around, their kids around, you know, like that's the truth. There are animals around. There is like there is like, you know, it's just you get on with it, and there is no point in it's the situation the way it is, right? So
yeah. Thanks a lot, Sophie. We are at the tail end of the session today. I think this was a very very powerful session. You shared a lot of personal anecdotes, and I think that's the most inspiring. Because like you said, I think I was making notes, you know, some of the great points that you mentioned. You said that every individual is different and every individual will have a different story, will have a different journey, right? What becomes important is that you embrace that moment. It's a very beautiful moment in an individual's life, so embrace it, enjoy it, and communicate with all the stakeholders, personal as well as professional stakeholders. Speak to your friends or take help if you're struggling with anything, any sort of anxiety, anything. Take help. It can be help from friends, it can be help from professional help. And I think from an organization's perspective, it's important to create a safe harbor, a place where people are willing to come and express what is happening in their lives. I think like that we can build a better working place. The employee will be, you know, at their max productivity if they feel safe to share. And yeah, just think of maternity, like you said, in the three buckets that you put it, right, which I think I'm going to take back when we think about this, of overall environment, the safe environment that we just spoke about, and the pre-maternity, the during maternity, and the post-maternity. All of them requires a different sort of thinking and different action plans. So I think that's a great advice. I think you shared already with us a lot of these tips that you use in your life, but I just want to check with you if you know any last message uh to pioneers, to PayU as an organization, any last message?
yeah, no, well, I'm glad to be on board with you guys. Like I just hope that my experience has been interesting for you, and that you will be able to actually just think about your own situation and maybe like draw your own plans around it. But just know that whatever is good for you is okay and should be okay for everybody around. And that's the important stuff. Don't stick to standards. Don't stick to cliche. Just what makes sense for you, and go along with it, and trust your instinct and enjoy the journey.
Great. Thanks a lot, Sophie. Thanks a lot for taking out time from your super busy schedule. It's really an honor. It's always immense pleasure speaking to you. I'm sure our audience also enjoyed it a lot. Thanks a bunch again. Have a nice day.
Bye, Anu. Bye, everybody.